Hello everyone and welcome to the MERN Tech. In this video we'll create an exciting application which is similar to Google Docs, which you must have used, and other word processing softwares. So here we can type any text we like. Hello world, how are you? Are you learning and improving yourself? And then we can make it bold, we can underline things, we can make things italic, or even we can change colors to blue, we can change colors to pink. So this is gonna be an exciting application. We can also click new, we can save as txt, we can save a file as txt. By default it's untitled. We can change the name. As you have seen, when you save as the file directly, it's untitled, but if you put some name such as my name itself, and then when you save as txt, it will be saved with whatever name you put here. You can even download as PDF. So when you click download as PDF, you'll get a PDF file where you will get the complete design, whatever you do. So it's completely like a word processing application, and when you click on enter, you'll expand this text editor. So it is going to be very much exciting application, and everything will be in the front end. There will be no Node.js or any other processing. We'll be using also a library called HTML to PDF, and we'll be using Bootstrap 5 for this. So there's a lot to learn in this video, and hope you will stick with me till the last. So let's get started. First, create a new folder, name it doc editor. Now open up VS Code and load the folder here. Restore it in desktop doc editor. Now after the folder has loaded, we need to create a couple of files here. First is index.html, hit enter. Then next we'll make style.css and then script.js. Now in index.html we have to write the basic boilerplate code. So HTML:5, hit tab, and now here I'll make the title as doc editor, and then h4 I'll give a heading doc editor. Now we also need to link up the styles, so write link href as style.css, and then also link the script at the end, script src script.js, the end tag. Now we also need to link Bootstrap so that we can apply the basic styling, and also we'll be using dropdown, which will be necessary. So this is Bootstrap 5, which is the latest version. So make sure you're using Bootstrap 5 to follow this video. So copy the CSS link and paste it just before our style. Then in the similar way, before our script file, just copy the Bootstrap link, Bootstrap.js, which will be required for the dropdown, and paste it. Now open this in the browser. You can use live server extension, or you can directly open it. Now we see that we have the doc editor output, which is the title. Now let us create the control buttons, which will be displayed, so like bold, italic, all those. Okay. So basically first we'll be doing the UI stuff and styling. So class is controls. Now inside this we'll create a button, classes. Now we'll apply Bootstrap classes like btn primary, let be file. For more options, this will be later converted to dropdown, and then we'll create an input type text for the file name, so that we can type the file name and edit it whichever we want. And also we'll create a container for all the button controls, such as bold, underline, input, italic, and color input, all those. This class equals to button contain control, let it be control button container, and here we'll have a couple of buttons with classes. It's btn. I want them to be dark, and let each of them have control button class so that we can style them individually. Let first be B for bold, then U for underline, and I for italic. And let's see the output, what we have. Okay, we have got some basic styling with Bootstrap, and now we need to line them up in a single line. So let us go to style.css and make these controls as flags. Display flags and justify content, let it be space between. Save it and let the style load. Since we are using CDN link, the style may take some time to load. Okay, after refreshing we see that it is loaded, and we need to add one more input. And first of all, let me wrap up everything inside container div class container, so that we can get some basic padding and margin. Now I want to add one more input. It's of type color, so that we can, okay, also one more class of control button. Okay, now we see that there is an input, but it's still not aligned properly. So for that we have to add, I want to style this up and give them equal width and height, and also make this flex to the container of these buttons. So first let us style control button container, make it display flex, and also all the control button, make sure you type the spelling correctly. All the control button will have width of 50 pixels and height of 100%, so that all of them have consistent width and height. Refresh the page, and also we need to have some margin, some gap between them. So we'll put margin left as 8 pixels. It should be enough. 8 pixels. Okay. Now we want this input and also this button to be attached together. So instead of putting them as flex children, I want to wrap both of them together into one more element, so that they stay together. So this button and this input text should be one element, and let me put a class as main controls, or whatever it is, main controls. So dot main controls. Let me also make it flex to remove any inconsistencies, and so that there is consistent styling. Yes, there's now consistent styling. And also let me add some ID here. It will be required also in JavaScript and also for styling. Its name will be file name input, where we will basically be typing the file names. Let me style it first using hash file name input, file name input. It needs to have some margin left of 10 pixels. Okay, there is some margin now, and everything is lined up consistently. Now we need to create the area where we will be typing and editing, doing all the text edit part. So for that we'll be creating one more div element, and then put some, first let me put an ID of content, and here I'll put a basic dummy text lorem. Just type lorem and hit tab in VS Code, and you will get some basic placeholder text, which you can use like that. Now this thing is not editable, but text area is editable, but we don't want to use text area. We want to use div element, so we have to use here one more attribute called content editable as true. Now if you check, when you click this, you can edit this element. Okay, we are not using text area because it may not be consistent in styling, and it's a form input element, and we don't want to use that. We want to use normal div element, so that well, we can use all the features and also any possible element that we want inside the div, like bold, underline, all of this, so that work properly. Now you can see these red dots below these words, and they're indicating that there is some wrong with the spelling or the word or the grammar. So to remove this error detection, we need to add one more property called spell check as false. Now when you add this property, you will see that it's no more. Now let us add some padding to this element, and also remove this blue color outline and add some shadow. So we have added a ID of content, so we can style it here, hash content. First let me add some padding of 20 pixels, and let me add box shadow 0 0. I'll add some blur, 5 pixel. Spread is not required, and let its color be RGBA. Then I let some opacity of 0.5. Then after box shadow, we want to also remove the outline. Let's first see the output, what we have. Okay, we have a nice shadow on the edges of this block, and we can edit everything, but this outline, dark blue outline, is appearing still, so we have to use a property, outline none, and then it won't appear anymore, and now we have it. We also want a min height so that it doesn't get reduced below a certain level. So for the min height, let me make it 300 pixel, and also I want to add margin, some vertical margin of 30 pixels, and we don't want any horizontal margin, so let it be 0. Okay, now we have this nice laid out. If we refresh the page, we'll get the text, and this is the place where we'll be editing our text, and we have all these controls which should be controlled by JavaScript. And I want to add a horizontal line, a border bottom below this, so let us quickly do it. First let me add an ID so that I can target it using CSS. So ID equals to title, and go to style CSS, and at the top just write hash title and put a padding vertical of 10 pixels, and then we want to put border bottom of 2 pixels, solid and CCC, a kind of light gray color. So you can see the design now, it's looking good. Just let's add some margin bottom to fine-tune the styling of 10 pixel. Let the city unload. Okay, I think everything is fine now. Okay, now we can proceed. And one more thing, this is gonna be the file name, so in the beginning let the file name be untitled, and later the user can edit to whatever file name he wants. So let us put the file name as default value of untitled. As you know, most of the word processing softwares have untitled as the default title. So after being this done, we have one more important thing left, is to implement this drop-down feature. So when we click the file, then there should be a couple of options like creating new one, which will re-erase everything, and then download as PDF and download as TXT. All those options we're gonna make now. So instead of this file button, we're gonna create a drop-down, for which we'll have to create div class equals to drop-down, and this is gonna be a Bootstrap 5 drop-down. So inside this drop-down element, we have to create the button. We have just copied the same button, we have just reused it, and here you have to add a class called dropdown toggle. Now when you add this class, you'll find that there is a small triangle icon which represents that it's a dropdown. And now we want to add one more element, which will be the drop-down menu, where all our drop-down content will be stored. Drop-down menu. Now here we will create all the buttons, which will be a drop-down item. Button class equals to, just add the class name, drop-down item. Now first option will be new. In the similar way, copy it 2 more times. We want to add 2 more options. Save as txt, and then at last save as PDF. Now after this done, you will find that our drop-down still doesn't work because we have to add one more important attribute. And if you're using Bootstrap 5, then you have to use data toggle equals to drop-down. But since we are using Bootstrap 5, the property name is actually data bs toggle. Data bs toggle, which is data bootstrap toggle, and equals to drop-down. Okay. So after we put this attribute, you'll find that drop-down is working perfectly. So we have options new, save as txt, and save as PDF. Okay, and we also have this input working now. When we refresh, it'll be untitled by default, and right now we have some default text which we'll be removing later. And now let's first implement these features of bold, underline, and italic. So first of all, I'll add ID attributes so that I can select using JavaScript all of them. So, and also in this input, ID equals to bold button, and the next will be underline. underline button, third will be italic button, and the last one will be color button. Now after saving it, go to your script file and create variables to store the references to these elements. So first it will be bold btn equals document dot, you can use getElement by ID, or also you can use query selector, then hash bold hyphen btn. Now copy this three more times, sorry, copy this 3 more times, and to select the next occurrence, which is similar in VS Code, hit Command D in Mac, and in Windows you have to use Control D or Alt D depending on the preference which are set up in the VS Code. So bold button, then it will be underline. Again, select the text, hit Command D to select the similar occurrence. Then the next will be italic button. In the similar way, then the last one will be color button. Now create event listeners. Bold button dot add event listener. For clicking, we'll create the event listener function, the handler, and here we'll run a special function called execCommand. Document dot execCommand. So this is a special function with which you can apply the text editing features, the rich text editing features like making something bold or something italic. When a document is in content editable mode, you can apply all the styling like that. So there are certain commands. The first parameter is the command that you want to apply to that editable content. So the first command will be bold. Okay, for the bold button, the command will be bold. In a similar way, for underline also we'll implement it. But first let us check the bold feature, whether it's working or not. So select some text and hit bold, and it is perfectly working just by one single command, which is document.execCommand. Now if you look up in the documentation for execCommand JavaScript, you will find this one, developer.mozilla.org, where you can look up all the other features which are possible, such as bold. We'll be using a couple of those here. Bold is there, delete, for color, font name, heading, indent, justify left. You can also justify all the features in a Word application. All the basic features, in fact, are available there. And also, you might say one thing, that it is deprecated, but I have to tell you that there are certain solutions besides using this. I don't know why it's deprecated, but you can also use like selection ranges and other alternatives, but it is very difficult to implement all those features without this command. And I suggest you to use this without any problem until some new alternative comes out, which is easy to implement. So right now there is no other option. So to implement these word processing features, we have to use .execCommand itself, even if it is deprecated. And it is still supported in many browsers, and right now there is no alternative implemented by the web community, so that's the reason we have to still use it. And bold button, now we have to use underline. Just copy it and then hit underline button. For underline, the command will be just underline. It is as simple as that, just changing the command name. In the same way, the next will be italic, and lastly it will be color button. Now when you hit the color button, we want to get the color input. Actually, color button is actually color input, where it is. So the last one, this is an input. Although we have the ID name as button, it's an input. So this color button will have an event listener of input. So every time this input changes, this will run, and we want to run a value called for color. It means foreground color. Here it's there. So for color, this changes the font color for the selection at the insertion point. Okay, so you can look it up in the documentation. And then we have to add second parameter as false. We don't want to show any default UI, and then the value of the for color, which is stored in this color input. So just put the value from this input, and this should work. Now if we check, after we added all these execCommand features, this API, this is default API of JavaScript, so we have bold, underline, italic, and for color. Now they should work as expected. Now select something and hit bold it was working, and underline, it is also working. Then if you make something italic, you see that they are italic, okay. And also let's try the color now, which is exciting. So if we make it red, you can see that in real time the color is changing from blue to red, or whatever color you put it here, such as green, because we are using the input event listener, which runs every time the input is changed. Okay, now we have set up all these features. Now the next thing we need to do is, okay, now when you hit enter, everything seems to work fine. You can remove text, you can do everything. You can hit Ctrl+Z, you can undo. Now we need to implement all of these features like new, save txt, PDF one by one. So for new, we will simply re-erase all content and simply we'll wipe it out, okay? So let us add, in the similar way how we implemented all these features here, for the control buttons we'll add IDs in all the 3 buttons of the drop down. So first will be new button, and then the second will be PDF button, which we'll use to save as PDF, and the third, sorry, the second is text button, and the third is PDF button. Now we have to set up event listeners, so we have to create again event listeners. First let us select the element. Sorry, what happened? Copy this. So instead of color button, it will be hit Command D, make new button. Same way, copy it 2 more times, and instead of new, Command D, it will be text button, and lastly it will be PDF button. So now for new button, similarly copy this event listener, since we have to add a click listener. New button, add event listener, click. When we click the new button, we simply want to erase all the content of this div element. So we have to select this div element and make its inner HTML as empty. So first select this div element again. Let's simply name it content. Content equals to document.querySelector hash content, since its ID is content. And here we have to do simply content dot inner HTML equals to empty string. Now go back to your file, and whenever you hit new, it will be simply wiped out. So it's just a basic feature and we didn't want to implement much. You can think all the ideas of implementing, but for now, just when we click new, it will simply wipe out everything. Now let us next implement save as txt. Okay, this will involve some code. So first let us write the event listener, text txt button dot add event listener, click. Now when you click it, first we want to create, we will use a different technique here. We'll create a button which will create a link dynamically, and then we'll click that button. The button will be a tag, which is href. So first we have to create that element, document.createElement a, and now we'll create a blob file, which is a binary file, okay, in the browser itself. So in a variable called blob, I'll store it and I'll write new blob, and here you have to pass an array, and inside this array you have to get the content. The content of our application is stored inside this element, so we have to select this through content.inner text, because we just want the text part and we don't want any HTML elements like bold, underline, which may be which will cause problems and it will appear in the text file. We just want to retrieve the text content of this HTML element and not any HTML text. So after doing this, you'll get a binary content, okay, you'll get some binary data. You store the binary data inside blob, and after you do that, you need to create a data URL. A data URL is just a representation of the binary data in a suitable format, okay, I think basically in hexadecimal format. So for that, you can do const URL, it will give a data URL equals to, you can say data URL equals to, now you have to use a built-in object called URL. Then here we have a method called create object URL. Using this, we can create an object URL from this binary data. So you simply have to pass this binary data here and you'll get a URL. Now you can attach this URL into href of this dynamically created element, and here will be data URL. Now also you have to add one more attribute called download, and here we want to add the file name that we want to download. For now, let the file name will be simply document.txt, and then simply at last click the button or whatever this input a element, this anchor element, we simply click it. So programmatically it's like clicking a link to download a file, but we are creating everything dynamically here, and also we are creating a content. Okay, so this is a way how you can create files dynamically, simple files basically like txt dynamically in your code. Now let us check what we have. So this is our basic text, we have underline, and if we click save as txt, we find that we have document.txt. Okay, even if the name is untitled, we haven't used it right now, and it has used the default name, which is document. Now if we open this txt file, we'll find that we have this basic text. See that there is no formatting like underline, or because it's simple text file. Okay, in PDF file it will retain anyway. So now let us utilize this input name. Whatever the input is typed here, it should be the file name which is downloaded, right? So go to index.html. Now find the input. The input is stored in where it is. This is file dropdown. After this, yes, there is a input tag with file name input ID. So you select this input. Const file name equals to document.query selector file name input. Now simply read this value here. So you'll say file name dot value. Since it's an input element, so using the value property you can retrieve its value and simply attach the .txt dynamically, and now we should be having the name as untitled. Perfect. So we have our name as untitled. Now if we change this name to my file and do any changes like hello, how are you, and if you try to save it as txt, you will find that you have the text as well as the name of the file is also retained. Okay, or you can give other files with spaces. Let's see whether it works or not, and exactly it works even with spaces. Okay, now let us implement the last feature of this application, which is to save as PDF. Now for this you have to use a library. Okay, don't worry, it's also in the front end. It doesn't involve any API or backend. The library is called HTML to PDF. Now I have a file downloaded which I am simply dropping it here. It's a library HTML to PDF, and I can simply link it here. First let me link this file, and you can get this file from the link of the GitHub repository of this application, which I'll attach to this video. So here you can add script src equals to html to pdf.js / script. You also have one more option. If you don't want to use this by saving like that, okay, by bringing into your local file system and then using in your script, if you want to use some CDN, then you also have the option of using CDN of this library. This library helps us to convert HTML into PDF files. So you can get the library as HTML to PDF.js. Simply search it, and then you'll find a link called execCommands.github.io. Just click the first link which you get in HTML to PDF, and the page will seem something like that. And here in table of contents, if you go to getting started section, you'll find console part where you will find a link inside add script. Simply copy that link and paste it in your script file, and in this way you will have the source CDN of this library. Now you have to do in this method because this library is not that popular and it's very it's difficult to directly get the CDN from the Google search. Okay, so you have to come to this website and go to console section and copy this. Or if you don't want to do that, simply get the file which from my GitHub repository of this application and use it. Okay, so after having this linked, we want to go to simply the event listener, so we have to create an event listener for the PDF button. So just go to PDF button.add event listener and click, and here we want to simply run a one-line statement which is HTML to PDF and then dot from. This is the global function which is exposed, global API exposed through this library, so that's why it's available as HTML to PDF. And then click dot from, then type dot from, and here you have to pass the element from where you want to create the PDF. So the element is content, and we have already selected it as content, dot from content, and just run save. And here in save you have to pass the file name, so our file name is this, simply pass file name.value. Since this input is already selected before, now just by running this one line of statement, dot from content, we can create PDF files and it will be downloaded directly to our browser. Okay, so after we have put the file name and the content, now we can simply check the output. So we have this text, let us bold some of them, let us apply some basic coloring, just red, okay, blue, and then let's make this underlined. Now if you click file and save as PDF, you can find that the name has been applied as well as the PDF file has been dynamically created in the front end. And if you open it, and it's perfect, we have the content. If we have long lines of content, it will still work. You can go down, hit PDF, see. And if you have multi-long lines of content, automatically pages will also be created using this library, using the simple HTML to PDF library, and I love it very much. Now we have all the features completed. We can create new text, PDF, bold, but we are missing one thing. This text will always appear when you reload the page. So let us at last remove this dummy text which we used for debugging. So now it is perfectly empty. It is completely empty. It's brand new editor. So just write something, change color, do whatever you like, download as PDF. Okay, if it's very long, multiple pages will be automatically created when you download this PDF, and also you can save it as txt, change the file name, do whatever you like. And moreover, for this video we just implemented a few features. You can improve this application by adding more features using the execComand. Okay, by looking up the documentation, we can add indentation, headings, font size increase, changing font family, and also you can add other drop downs beside this, such as view, more, edit, cut, paste, all those options, and add actions to them. So a lot of things are possible. So I leave it up to you, and thank you for watching this video, and like, comment, and subscribe to the Merge Stack.